Alone in a well-lit white room, a guy awakens. A really strange series of events begins when he touches a suspiciously phallic protuberance that emerges on the wall. Suddenly, a pink toothbrush appears out of nowhere and crashes to the floor. The imprisoned man soon finds himself involved in ridiculous and humorous attempts to get free from the chamber. He releases random objects off the walls and sets up a real mousetrap game where the keys to his escape can be found with a rope, a toilet plunger, and a vase filled with sushi. Meanwhile, we are headed toward a green-masked Mexican wrestler known as Escargo Man, preparing for a major bout. His relatives assemble around him, worried by his lack of emotion prior to combat. Spoiler ahead. Watch out! A Japanese man in colorful pajamas awakens in a white empty space with no doors or windows and no visible ceiling. When he reaches one of the walls to have a closer look, he notices something strange sticking out of it, with an odd shape. After poking it a few times, he pushes the tip, causing hundreds of giggling baby angels to emerge from the floor and walls, solely to stay a few seconds before returning the way that they came. One thing they leave behind, however, is that all of their male members have begun sticking off the wall and floor. As he sniffs the finger, he has to contact the strangely shaped button. The man screams in fright, then cries out and begs for rescue from anyone nearby, but to no purpose. He decides to commence pushing all of the buttons to see what takes place, and each time he does, a random thing falls into the room, ranging from a small toothbrush to a large vase. By clicking the same button repeatedly, he receives the identical object, and therefore his examination of this notion on a single button results in an enormous heap of chopsticks. When he touches the button next to the chopstick, a small card emerges from the wall and strikes the legs. After crying out in pain, he hits the next button, which changes into a buttock and passes gas on his face. Sometime later, the individual has gathered a wide range of random items in the room, and once he tosses the ball at the wall, it clicks a button, resulting in sushi. This delights him because he has been feeling hungry, but he discovers he has no soy sauce. He requests his captors for it, but as usual, he receives no response. So he continuously hits one of the knobs till he has a pile of sushi right in front of him without sauce. Unaware of what to do, the man eats the sushi, which he realizes is quite tasty, and when he's eaten the last piece, he hits the button demanding more, getting upset when a bottle of soy sauce appears. After furiously throwing the bottle away, he hits another button and receives a pair of old-school 3D glasses. Once he puts them on, he observes a tiny angel pointing at his member, which makes him joyful because he believes he has found the solution. However, upon clicking that particular button, all he receives is a countdown and huge buttocks appearing up above to release gas on top of him. After a few hours, he has read 5 volumes of a manga he enjoys, but when he hits a button to get the 6th, he receives the 7th. Frustrated, he starts pressing different buttons, which give him numbers 8 and 9, but not 6. The final button he presses, however, has a significant surprise for him. It unlocks an area of the wall, displaying a door beyond it. The man celebrates his finding, but in his excitement, he loses track of which button unlocks the escape. He tries one as random and, unsurprisingly, sees an African tribesman running from wall to wall. The next one causes water to fall on his head. The third one proves to be the one that he was looking for, and as soon as the wall opens, he rushes to it, simply to find it close. His second attempt ends up in exactly the same way, and then he understands that the door remains open as long as the tip is lowered, so he starts experimenting with different techniques to achieve this. First, he enters a runner status, pushing it down with his foot. He then smashes it with a fly swatter from as far away as possible, expecting that the extra distance will help him run faster. None of these work, nor do leaping or running. He doesn't give up and tries to push the cart after hitting the button. However, after a few attempts, he realizes he is unable to use it. He desires to find a technique to keep the button tipped down. He places the large vase on top of it, but the button sticks back up, which means the man decides that he should fill the vase in order to make it heavier. First, he attempts it with the water button, yet no matter how many times he tries to move the water, it always falls onto him and somewhere else. His following attempt is to stuff the vase with sushi, which turns so heavy that he cannot even pick it up. The man is therefore left with no alternative but to use chopsticks to take out a large amount of sushi piece by piece. Shortly after that, once he's pulled out enough, he appears to slightly lift up the vase and slide it nearer to the buttons. When he gets there, he has forgotten which button it was, and while he attempts one, the African tribesman appears and accidentally bumps into the vase, causing it to split and break in half. This throws the guy towards the verge, and as he freaks out while yelling non-stop, he discovers the correct member and starts covering it in sushi. This, of course, does not work either, and a tiny button appears among the grains. The man then attempts to cover the button using tape, then adds tape and a steel plate, but none works. Upon having a few medications to relieve the pain caused by the door hitting him on his back, the man needs to brush his teeth, so he presses a button to acquire water. However, it was the wrong button, and this one showed a rope falling down the ceiling. This quickly improves his mental state since it inspires him to come up with a new strategy. He opens the door and then utilizes the rope to pull himself across the room, making it before the door closes. Unfortunately, when he tries to access the door behind the wall, he discovers that it is locked. He gets to the room barely in time before the entrance closes, but it hits his body on his way out. So in dissatisfaction, he kicks the wall, hitting one of the buttons and presenting the key, flying into the center of the room. However, as with the door, it disappears when the button is released. So the man must discover a method of keeping both the key and the door open. Initially, he should locate the button again, as he could not remember the correct button. He predicts a button based on the place where his foot could have landed earlier, just to see a dog show up from the wall and bark at him. After trying several times, the third attempt becomes successful. While maintaining his eyes and directing his hand over the button, the guy gets a small piece of sushi fish, which he returns to mark the correct button. When he pushes it, the dog emerges once again. This time, he comes across the button more quickly and goes forward with his strategy. He allows the rope to appear and then swings on it to get to the other buttons, yet it continues to be insufficient. Then he notices a plunger he obtained from one of the many buttons and realizes how to solve his challenge. He may utilize the plunger to apply pressure to the wall and also push himself for a longer distance quickly. His strategy works after one unsuccessful effort. He is able to press the button, grab the key, press the door button, and get to the door earlier than the door closes. He inserts the key into the lock and quickly turns it, but once he tries to open the door, he learns that there exists a second lock on top of it that requires 3 numbers to open. The man hurries out, getting knocked by the entrance as it shuts down, and annoyed, throws the plunger away, activating the button that releases the African tribesman. As he observes him pass, he notices something. The 3 numbers are written on his forehead, which could be the code that he was searching for. The man repeats the procedure of swinging with the rope and then jumping 3 times, once for every number needed to be entered. The third time he opens the door, which is locked and requires more effort to open. When he ultimately is successful, the wall behind him closes, trapping him and providing him with insufficient space to fully open the door. Heartbroken, the man sits on the ground and begins crying, bringing back all of the fun he previously had with the items that he had. Now he knows he didn't appreciate what he had when he had it. Unexpectedly, he feels a breeze upon his face from the left wall. As soon as he touches it, he notices a crack, indicating that it is a fake wall. Without any delay, he forces the panel open and rushes out, landing in an enigmatic hallway that appears to be floating in a completely dark space. It seems like he's been running into an exit, but after he finally arrives in a room, his hair is longer and the hues of his clothes vanish. The space remains vacant, and the door he opens closes immediately when he walks in, but instead of baby angels, he finds adult angels that disappear into the wall, leaving only the members to be utilized. This is the practice phase. Meanwhile, Antonio's family in Mexico are worried when his father, a wrestler known as Escargo Man, is acting more quietly than usual. His wife speculates that it could be due to the fact that his next opponent is far younger than him, however. His grandfather insists that experience rather than youth is what matters the most. Escargo Man gets picked up by Karen in her truck and driven to the wrestling ring so he may begin his preparations early, which involves switching clothing and praying. At school, Antonio gets bullied by his classmates for betting on Escargo Man, who calls the man a weak loser. As the match comes, Sister Karen gets Antonio and their grandfather in her truck and drives them to see Escargo Man in play. Antonio and his grandfather secure some seats for themselves just before the event commences. Super Demon and Tequila Joe represent the Northern Tough Ones, who get into the ring first. Then, going by the team name Kiss Me a Lot, Escargo Man and his companion Silver Eagle enter. With a strong start, Silver Eagle is the very first fighter for his team, yet he is quickly defeated when the Northern Tough Ones fight him together rather than one-on-one. They keep pointing at Escargo Man and demanding him to take part in the battle, but he declines until Silver Eagle manages to get Super Demon and Tequila Joe hit into one another, allowing the man to escape. Escargo Man gets caught up too, quite quickly. However, the man in the enigmatic high-tech room, hits a member just in time to stop his opponent from hitting him with a chair. This enables Escargo Man to unexpectedly grow his neck and smash both opponents, defeating them both. However, nothing happens in the room with that press, so he continues to press the very same button, striking out Silver Eagle, Antonio, the referee, and even the bell. When he gets no response, the man begins to experiment with different buttons. This results in a Los Angeles metal band, forcing the singer to breathe flames over the crowd. Along with several other reactions, the other forces a Russian magician to fail his trick. Then the guy observes the fact that there is no ceiling in this room compared to the previous one, and that he can clearly see the angels flying around. This time, he makes the decision to attempt something different. He will be using the buttons to climb the walls. Each time he heads on a button with his feet or grasps one with his hands, something incredible occurs on Earth. The higher he climbs, the more complicated effects grow. Nature is no longer the only factor. Humans and both small and large things are involved. The man's beard and hair had grown long at the point that he reached the summit, and he was no longer in need of holding onto the wall. He can now float like the angels, and with all the knowledge he has received from training in the earlier rooms, he accepts his job as God and starts carefully selecting the greatest hits for humanity rather than just pressing buttons randomly. When he has completed, the walls have given way to feathers, and he passes through a glowing portal to reach the last room. The man is going to press a large member. The room has the continents painted on its walls. This is the future phase. We really hope you enjoyed today's recap of the movie Symbol. Please leave a comment below on what you loved about the movie and why. Be sure to like the video, and please don't forget to support our channel by subscribing so you don't miss any amazing content. Until next time, light, camera, action. We look forward to seeing you in our next video.